All right, guys. Yeah, we're happy to have a cybersecurity company and cybersecurity expert with us for the second time, actually. Back on the show, Ian Paterson is the CEO of Plurilock, the symbol PLUR on the TSX Venture Exchange here in Toronto. First of all, it's good to have you, Ian. Welcome back. I hope you're feeling better as well. You're a little under the weather the past few days.
It's good to be back. Hopefully this interview will be hot dog worthy.
Well, we'll find that button somewhere and get you some at the end. Let's start maybe with a bit of a high-level view here. This is a subject that, I mean, I feel like we're talking about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, more and more and more often. You know, you hear a headline or see a headline almost once a week, it feels like, of this company was hacked or this company is investigating some sort of data breach. Tell us, first of all, a little bit about the company from a high level. What are we looking at here?
So Plurilock is a cybersecurity solutions provider. We've had tremendous growth over the last couple of years. We just recently put out last year's financials, and we're doing approximately 70 million in top line revenue. That's up from 64 million the year before, 36 million the year before that. And largely, this is driven by the fact that, as you said, companies are getting hacked left, right, and center. And that's true both in the commercial sector as well as in the public sector. Our largest client, if you will, is the U.S. federal government. And in fact, earlier this week, we just announced a $6 million purchase from the U.S. Department of Treasury, but we also include U.S. Department of Defense, U.S. Navy, U.S. Army. On the Canadian side, Canadian Defense, Canadian RCMP, law enforcement, et cetera. So these are the clients. These are the people that we serve. And the reason that our revenue is increasing is that the need for cybersecurity solutions to stave off attacks and to maintain compliance are becoming more and more and more important. And to your point, I think we're almost becoming numb to the amount of news headlines that we see announcing these things.
I had an experience of my own, just going back a couple of weeks here, with a credit card, you know, and my wife and I contacted the credit card company, and they essentially said, we don't know how they're doing this. So it gives you an idea of, and they're essentially, you know, working harder and working faster and staying ahead of some of the security, so much needed in general. Give us, from your point of view here, where is this market at? Why is it, you know, more and more of a problem these days?
It actually is an unbelievable number. The estimates used to be that the cybersecurity market was going to be around $1 trillion. Now the estimates are that it's going to be $2 trillion. So it's actually hard to comprehend. But I think if you ask the question why is there such a demand for cybersecurity capabilities, I would point to two major tailwinds. The first one is that cybersecurity now is a business. And 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you might have heard about identity theft or people skimming a credit card, but you didn't really hear about ransomware gangs. You didn't hear about crypto jacking. You didn't hear about North Korea actually funding a huge chunk of their budget through stealing of Bitcoin and stealing of crypto. Now you do. And so cybersecurity or hacking is a money-making venture for financially motivated groups, which again could be criminal gangs, could be nation states. The second thing is that cybersecurity is also a tool of soft power. So what does that mean? Well, practically speaking, when Russia invaded the Ukraine a couple of years ago, what we saw was that it was preceded by a number of cyber attacks to all of Europe. So European critical infrastructure, especially oil and gas, was hit very hard in the lead up because they were trying to disrupt before an actual physical invasion. And what you don't see behind the scenes is the amount of cybersecurity attacks that governments are perpetrating against other governments. Now, this is commonplace in the cybersecurity industry, but there's all these knock-on effects. And so when you see an individual headline, like again, we'll say North Korea attacking Sony for releasing a movie, what you don't see is the tens, hundreds, or sometimes thousands of other attacks that go unreported. So these are two major drivers for the fact that this is such a large industry. And I think that investors are starting to wake up to this opportunity.
The company had a heavily oversubscribed $5.5 million common equity financing going back a few months ago. Talk us through the strategy here from the management side of things and the board when it comes to that.
So Plurilock, we see that there's just a lot of opportunity ahead of us. We've seen both really good organic growth. We also see a tremendous amount of inorganic growth opportunity. We wanted to take advantage of that. And so to your point, we closed a very heavily oversubscribed round, $5.5 million raised. I think even today, I get pretty regular feedback that we are horrendously undervalued, I think is the term that I've been told a couple times, relative to peers. So Plurilock today trades at a reasonably small market cap relative to the revenue that we have. And if you compare against our peers, we are quite depressed relative to that. So the opportunity that we see is both to go out, keep our clients safe, but there's a tremendous amount of upside that we see that we want to go after, and that's really what the team is motivated to do.
When you look at, I mean, you mentioned, to start things off here, 70.1 million fiscal year ending 2023 in revenues. Q1 2024, particularly margin growth, approximately 21.9%. Explain the major factors here, Ian, from your perspective, and what's contributing to that.
So we have a base of hundreds of name brand marquee clients. In cybersecurity, you're typically not able to name who your clients are because you're the people who get called when the worst day of a company's life occurs. But certainly on the government side, we talked about it. On the commercial side, these are largely Fortune 1000 sized organizations, in some cases S&P 500 or Fortune 100 sized organizations. And what we're doing is we're providing a whole set of capabilities. In some cases, we're providing hardware and software. In other cases, though, we're providing very high-end security consulting work. Earlier this spring, we recently formalized the services work that we're doing, called the Plurilock Critical Services Team. And that critical services team is actually today focused largely on a subset of our customers in the semiconductor ecosystem. So semiconductors fit all of the same drivers that we've talked about. Bad guys want to get at the intellectual property. Bad guys also want to disrupt factories. So think ransomware. Bad guys also want to steal secrets, etc. So they're really at the center of a tremendous amount of risk from cyber attacks, as well as there's increasing compliance burdens and obligations. So think of the U.S. CHIPS Act, having to nearshore, reshore things, supply chains. There's just a lot of complexity there. Because there's that both risk and complexity, these companies need help. And Plurilock, to date, has been able to do a really good job of helping those companies. That has created some notoriety. And so we're seeing revenue growth in the services component that has been continuing in the last couple of years, and we see an opportunity to continue that. And so the impact to our financials is gross margin improvement or gross profit improvement. And so that's a key focus for us for this year.
As we see, as we mentioned at the start here, more and more of these headlines on a daily basis, weekly basis almost. Where's the opportunity specifically for the retail side of things here on the investment? Not only for the company specifically, but maybe for the industry as a whole.
Well, what's really interesting is that cybersecurity is an industry where there are really big names. So think Palo Alto Networks, think CrowdStrike, think Palantir. These are great large cap names that are pretty well known. The challenge is a traditional retail investor typically does not have access to the growth names. And so there's very few publicly traded growth names in cybersecurity at the micro cap or small cap level. And so there's been quite a disparity between what venture capitalists have access to in terms of being able to fund the next CrowdStrike versus what a retail investor is able to do, because there's not as much opportunity. There are not as many names to be able to invest in. That was part of the reason why we opted to take Plurilock public at such an early stage, is because we saw that there weren't that many opportunities, and it provides the average retail investor some opportunity to participate in an earlier stage growth name. So that's just kind of one of the dynamics of cybersecurity that exists today.
If we look ahead now, maybe through the remainder of this year into 2025, is there one or two things we can leave investors with as far as what the company has coming up in the near future here?
Well, we're very focused on signing up new clients as well as satisfying our current clients. So I think today's or this week's, announcement of the $6 million sale to the U.S. Treasury. That is exactly the type of thing that our team is focused on, and investors should absolutely be looking out for.
Appreciate the time as always. Ian Paterson, CEO of Plurilock, again, PLUR here on the TSX Venture Exchange here in Toronto. Good to see you, Ian. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you to Ian.